The woodland property shall be used, maintained, preserved, operated, improved, and developed by the University of Illinois for educational and research purposes, as a forest, wild and plant life reserve, as an example of landscape architecture, and as a public park. In the heart of Illinois farmland, there is a rare sanctuary of natural woodlands and designed formal landscapes. A place where the rustic and elegant exist in harmony. A place of study and leisure where work meets play. Robert Allerton Park and Retreat Center, much like the man who created it, is quiet and mysterious, hidden from plain sight, grandiose yet humble. There was a time when the fate of this land was not unlike the surrounding sea of agriculture. That time was before Robert Allerton realized his vision to create his private land of plenty, a personal achievement that became his greatest public gift.
Robert Allerton Park is near Monticello, approximately 26 miles from the Urbana-Champaign campus. President Stoddard said that Mr. Allerton has made not only a magnificent gift to the university, but also a permanent contribution to the cultural and recreational life of the people of Illinois. The gift, valued at more than $1.25 million, includes more than 5,500 acres of land, on which are the park with its mansion and gardens.
Robert Allerton Park and Retreat Center, now a part of the University of Illinois, was created at the turn of the 20th century as the bold vision of a Midwest millionaire, philanthropist, and art collector. Robert Henry Allerton spent nearly a half-century designing and curating the home and gardens on his estate outside of Monticello, Illinois. Professionally, he managed the nearly 11,000 acres of surrounding farmland, but his true passions were best expressed throughout his 1,500-acre woodland property. Robert was a wealthy man, respected for his hard work, but with undeniable credit to his father, Samuel Waters Allerton, who single-handedly accumulated the Allerton wealth and equipped his children with the tools to succeed.
Samuel Waters Allerton was born in 1828, and the story goes that when he was born, basically everybody cried because there was one more mouth to feed.
In Amenia, New York, where Samuel was born and raised, he watched helplessly as his father's business failed and his family's assets were liquidated. He worked hard alongside his father as he ventured into farming. He vowed to make a name for himself and his family. By 1860, Samuel had moved permanently to Illinois, determined to fulfill two main goals: win the hand of his love and make a name and wealth for himself with what he called the courage and the knowledge of how to trade.
Sam Allerton was certainly poor when he came to this area. There's a set of notes from B.F. Harris, who said, a young man came to me one day and he said, Mr. Harris, I'll drive your pigs to Chicago for you. He says, he seemed like an honest guy. And so sure enough, a couple months later, here he is. Best price I ever got for hogs, she said, in Chicago. And the young man made money too. And I said, I think that he's really going to amount to something. And this was Sam Allerton. Start.
He married Pamela Wigton Thompson in Peoria, Illinois, and moved to Chicago. After some daring business decisions in 1863, Sam was able to corner the pork market. He acquired a lucrative pork contract with the Union Army and quickly established himself as one of Chicago's livestock elite.
Samuel Waters Allerton was a self-made man, the proverbial self-made man. He really had a knack for knowing how to make money. He really hit his speed with the livestock industry. By the time he was done, he owned 78,000 acres from New Jersey to Nebraska. He also is one of the people that helped organize the First National Bank of Chicago, and he was one of the people who helped organize the Union Stockyards. So he was quite the mover and shaker.
He had achieved his place in the upper class of Chicago in just a few short years. By the birth of his second child, Sam was a self-made multi-millionaire. This child, Robert Henry Allerton, would one day inherit his father's wealth and the responsibility it carried.
Robert was born in 1873. He had a sister that was 10 years older than him, Kate Rynette Allerton.
Robert enjoyed a healthy and privileged youth. He was raised on Prairie Avenue in Chicago, referred to by locals as the sunny street that held the sifted few.
His best friends down the street were the Marshall Field children. Mrs. Field threw a party for 400 of the kids' closest friends, and it cost Mrs. Field $75,000 to have that party, which in recent conversions would be about $1.2 million. So that's the lifestyle that Robert grew up around.
But even the sifted few are not spared from heartache. Soon enough, the Allerton household experienced tragedy.
Robert had a normal childhood up until about the age of 7 when scarlet fever hit him and his family. It did cause the death of his mother.
Following Pamela's death, her sister Agnes arrived to assist the family through the difficult time. 2 years later, she married Samuel and filled her sister's role as the Allerton matriarch.
Robert became very close to his stepmother. She instilled in him a love of architecture and art and music.
As Agnes instilled a sense of creativity in Robert, Samuel hoped to equip his son with a sense of pragmatism. In a letter to his children, Sam wrote, "There are a great better things than money, but a man or woman with no money will have a hard row to hoe, and everything will be hard. It's one thing to make it, and another thing to keep it. When you go into business, go slow until you fully understand it." As an early investment for his son, Samuel put 280 acres of his prime Piatt County land in the name of young Robert. Robert, only a child at the time, could not have known that this wonderful gift, a slice of fertile land located 150 miles south of Chicago, would in turn become his greatest gift to Illinois. Robert had been raised by his stepmother to appreciate the arts and architecture. This appreciation blossomed into passion during the summer of 1893, when the World's Columbian Exposition filled Chicago with an unprecedented energy and millions of international visitors. Chicago was effectively enchanted, with Robert and his dear friend Frederick Clay Bartlett under the spell.
They went to the Columbian Exposition. Frederick Clay Bartlett wrote a journal. In it, he says, "My dear friend and I spent copious amounts of time at the German pavilion absorbing the beauty of the paintings and so forth, and also a copious amount of wine, I understand." They fell in love with all the paintings that were there, and they just decided together that they wanted to go to Munich and study art. One would imagine that the parents weren't too thrilled because they probably wanted their sons to follow in their footsteps, but they both agreed to help fund them.
Robert eventually realized that he lacked the talent to be a great artist. He abandoned his hopes of establishing a career as a painter. Robert burned all of his work and returned to the States. He was 25 years old, with no plans for the future. Get in touch with a farm somewhere. While you work it, your good returns will not only be coming in, but you'll be laying up health, vitality, and character, which are always welcomed by Metropolitan Enterprises. Samuel Allerton. By 1883, Sam had accumulated over 11,000 acres in central Illinois, making him the largest landowner in Piatt County.
So after Robert left Europe, he came home and he told his father, "Now what should I do?" And his father said, "Well, why don't you manage the property down in Piatt County?"
With this new challenge in mind, Robert left Chicago to take up residence in the heart of the Piatt County farms. With his father's assistance, Robert set out to build a suitable farmhouse. And what suited Robert was, like himself, creative, elaborate, and eccentric.
Sam said, "Okay, why don't you go to Europe along with your friend John Borey, who is this architect, and why don't you try and find something that looks like what you want to be built here, and we'll take care of that."
While in London, they paid a visit to Ham House, a grand manor and gardens along the Thames River. Ham House became the primary model from which Borey would design Robert's sprawling estate. Robert and John Borey returned to Illinois with plans in hand. They quickly began construction in 1899. The estate would cover over 32,000 square feet. The H-shaped floor plan allowed for numerous rooms for living, working, and entertaining. The exterior of the main house was finished in under a year, and Robert took up residence. Having barely settled in, he left once again for Europe in late 1900. This winter trip abroad would become an annual tradition for Robert to escape the Illinois cold and to begin collecting the multitude of fixtures, furniture, and art that was needed to decorate his vast new home. What would come to define him and his property extended far beyond the walls of the house. He would become an artist in his own right through the design and curation of his numerous gardens. These gardens stretched along avenues complete with sculpted art, the most prominent of which are still admired today: a replica of Adam by Rodin, the corridor of blue food dogs collected during trips in the East, the dramatic Death of the Last Centaur by Bourdelle, and the incredible Sun Singer by Carl Milles.
He wanted to explore this property as his canvas and put art wherever he could to enhance the beauty that he found here.
He had a vision to plan something like he planned, and then it still be in effect and kind of this breathing organism still, almost 100 years later.
He built this place, which is in the middle of literally millions of acres of pretty flat farmland that we have here in central Illinois. And so when you come onto his property, it's really kind of magical. I mean, he was a farmer because that's how he made money, but his true love was art. And you see it in this building, and you see it throughout the park.
Robert was an entertaining man, known for his great sense of humor and creative gatherings. Guests walked the property to discover the numerous rustic gardens, gazebos, and sculptures surrounded by miles of hiking trails. Beginning in 1919, Robert served on the University of Illinois Campus Planning Commission. This would mark the beginning of two of his most important relationships, one with the university and one with his lifelong companion. John Wyatt Gregg was a University of Illinois architecture student from Wisconsin. John had very few family members and had lost both of his parents.
There came a time, I think it was 1922, that the university always has this Dad's Day. And everybody said, oh, poor John, he doesn't have a father to attend. Everybody thought, well, why doesn't Robert be his dad for the Dad's Day event? And so together they went to all the events.
In the years following, the two men kept in contact. After graduating, John worked for a time at the Chicago architecture firm of David Adler, a friend of Robert. When work began to dry up for Adler, Robert invited John to take up residence at the farms and help with the design and management of the property. John accepted the invitation, and their lifelong partnership commenced. John joined Robert on his international hunt for art and inspiration. The winters were spent traveling and collecting, and the summers were spent on the farms, creating and maintaining the landscape. John saw Robert as his mentor, friend, and role model.
Robert actually let John Gregg design a lot of the gardens around here and put his own fingerprint on a lot of the areas in the park. It seemed to me like it was more Robert's idea on the art pieces that were brought in. And then once he brought him in here, John Gregg really stole the show and made these beautiful spaces around the park to display these pieces.
In 1937, the final landscape installation, The Lost Garden, was completed. Robert and John again set sail in the winter, and in 1938, while visiting Hawaii, they began a new chapter in their lives. At 65, Robert had become weary of travel and disliked the harsh Midwest winters. He eagerly purchased a beachfront property on the island of Kauai, with the aim to spend his remaining years in warm solitude. The construction, landscaping, and decorating of this new home soon became their focus. The continued management of the farms 4,000 miles away became more complicated, and it would soon be time to pass the torch. For Robert, this would be no simple task. The quiet and reserved Robert was about to make his loudest gesture yet. In the fall of 1946, Robert donated the farms to the University of Illinois, the institution he considered best suited to accept this enormous gift. The public was now able to explore and enjoy the fruits of the Allerton's labor.
If you look at the gift that he gave, it wasn't a monetary gift. Monetary gifts can be squandered. He gave a place that generations upon generations of people can come and experience and enjoy.
Robert wanted people to enjoy nature. That's why he wanted to make sure that something was done with this as opposed to just selling it to make a buck.
In 1967, Allerton Park was presented with its first major hurdle. The Army Corps of Engineers was moving forward with a decades-old plan to dam the Sangamon River to create a new reservoir for the city of Decatur.
The dam flood pool would extend through the park, so the whole lower reaches of the park would be flooded, practically almost up to the terraces of the house.
So I figured the best thing I could do was write to the newspaper, put forth the issue, and it did cause some stir, and I thought, well, that's it. That'll do it.
But the Corps was no easy foe. Only an immense and organized effort could dismantle this increasingly popular project.
A fellow grad student in engineering comes up. He and I then took off, started a large petition, organized the whole set of activities, involved all the conservation groups.
When the dam project started, it created another buzz, and it really got people interested.
Public participation was immense during the controversy. It went from about 50,000 a year to probably 500,000 a year.
It became clear that the community had come to see Allerton Park, once a private estate of a quiet, eccentric man, as a part of their local identity and as a valuable asset to the public.
Finally, through a lot of research and hard effort on people who really wanted to save the park, it was determined that the project was not feasible, and so it was dropped.
Now it was up to the university to move the park into the future and continue Robert's legacy for generations to come.
When you have a piece of property like this that's been endowed, that's protected, it's a real rarity. It means it's going to be here for future generations to use.
We have 3 unique portions of this park. We have 1,500 acres of natural areas and hiking trails. We also have a kind of a botanic garden interspersed with over 100 pieces of art. But then we also have this mansion that is a unique place to stay, to host a conference or a retreat, whatever you're doing. And you can find those, but it's rare to find all 3 of those in one place. And that's what makes this place unique. And so we hope to build on each phase of those. The thing that I've learned from being out here is that people don't just like Allerton Park. They love it. I think people are just so shocked to find a place like this here in the prairie that it really incites a lot of passions.
It has now become a sort of a paradise for over 100,000 visitors every year who come from not just Monticello, not just Champaign-Urbana, but from many other countries have visited this place and marveled at how this wonderful mansion and art and sculpture rise from the prairie.
Still, I think he has a very strong effect on people. And it's more than his art, it's more than his landscape. It was just the type of person he was. And that effect is telling. I mean, when you go out and walk around, you can feel what he wanted you to feel and experience what he wanted you to experience.
Allerton Park is a truly unique gift to Illinois. Robert fulfilled what he saw as his duty to bestow this park upon the public for our education and enjoyment. He gave us a true land of plenty, a gift that may teach us how to make better use of our land and ourselves. The Allertons have passed on, but their legacy will live in perpetuity on this rare slice of Midwest prairie.